So we're going to be looking at ratio today, focusing on what ratios are and simplifying ratios. So first off, what is a ratio? Well, a ratio just shows how much of one thing we have compared to another thing. So if I had 2 yellow counters to every 1 pink counter, I would say my ratio of yellow counters to pink counters is 2 to 1, okay? Because I have 2 yellow counters to every 1 pink counter. And this is how we write ratios, okay? We put how many of this thing we have, and then we put a colon to how many we have of this thing, okay? Now, it's really important to keep in mind the order in which you're being asked to give your ratio. I am asking how many yellow counters to pink counters there are. I have 2 yellow counters and 1 pink counter, so 2 to 1. If I was asked how many pink counters I have to yellow counters, I need to be really careful there, because, well, how many pink counters do I have? I have 1 pink counter to 2 yellow counters, okay? So you really need to be careful to keep in mind what order you are being asked, okay? So if I had, let's say, 5 yellow counters and 4 pink counters, and I was asked what is the ratio of yellow counters to pink counters, it would simply be, well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yellow counters, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pink counters. So that would be my ratio. Now, let's make this a tad more difficult. Let's say I have 8 yellow counters and I have 4 pink counters, okay? So again, if I was asked for the ratio of yellow to pink, I would just go, okay, yellow to pink. I have 8 counters to 4 pink counters. Okay, so my ratio, let's see if I can zoom out a wee bit. There we go. I have 8 yellow counters to 4 pink counters. But if I line these up so we can kind of visually see what I'm talking about here. Yes, I have a total of 8 counters and I have a total of 4 counters, but can you also see that, well, for every 2 yellow counters, I have 1 pink counter. For these 2 yellow counters, I have 1 pink counter. For these 2 yellow counters, I have 1 pink counter. For these 2 yellow counters, I have 1 pink counter. So I could actually simplify this. I'm not saying 8 to 4 is a hard ratio, but I could make it a little bit more simple for myself. I could just say, well, actually, I could simplify that ratio to, for every 2 yellow counters I have 1 pink counter. Okay. Now, it's nice to be able to see this visually. So we'll do another one that we can kind of visually see what's happening. Okay, we'll keep this over to the side. Okay, and let's say I have 10 yellow counters this time. So I have 10 yellow counters, and let's say I have 8 pink counters, okay? So if I was asked again, just the ratio for yellow counters to pink counters, I would say, well, I've got 10 yellow counters and I have 8 pink counters. Okay, that's fine. But I might want to simplify that down a little bit. So let's visualize this and let's split these up into nice little columns here. Okay. So hopefully now we can see that, well, for every 5 yellow counters I have 4 pink counters. Okay. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just split them up into columns. Okay, I thought that moving these would be easier. They're not that easy to move. Okay, but there we go. That's better. Okay, so for every 5 yellow counters I have 4 pink counters. So I could actually rewrite that as, well, for every 5 I have 4 pink counters. I have slightly simplified that ratio. Again, not saying that 10 to 8 is a hard ratio particularly, but I've simplified it slightly. So now let's look at both of these examples here. Okay, we've visually seen what it looks like to do this, to sort of split them up visually. But, you know, for a lot of the questions that you're doing, you're not going to be able to physically see what your numbers look like. I will say that, you know, please remember that these counters are always available to you. They're just in the number stacks bags. So if you want to get the counters out and kind of visually look at it, you can. But yeah, it's not always going to be the most simple to do, okay, because your numbers might get quite big. So what are we actually mathematically doing here? Well, we're looking at these two numbers. Okay, we're looking at our original ratio at the moment here. So 8 to 4. And if these two numbers appear in the same times table, which they do, they both appear in the 2 times table, and they both appear in the 4 times table, we can actually divide both sides by the same number. So I am dividing both sides by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Okay, and that's what we did here. We had our 8 to 4, and then we split both groups up into 4 bits. So I split this up into 4. So now I have 4 lots of yellow, and I'm splitting this up into 4. So now I have 4 lots of pink. So that's what we did here. We just divided by 4. Okay, and that's what we're doing here. We're dividing by 4. Now, if we look here, the only times table that has 2 and 1 in it is the 1 times table. And if I divide by 1, I just get 2 and 1 again. Okay, so I can't simplify this anymore. This is the most simplified. It's fully simplified. That's the word I was looking for. So then I look at this, 8 and 10, 10 and 8, and I think, okay, what can I divide both of these numbers by? I could divide them both by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5, 8 divided by 2 is 4. And that's what I did here. That's what I did with the counters. Okay, we originally had a group of the 10 yellow ones and the 8 pink ones, and I just split both colours into 2 lots. Okay, so I now have 2 lots of 5 and 2 lots of 4, so I can simplify my ratio down to 5 and 4. So let's quickly look at some examples here in your notes. So I'll zoom in a little bit again. So what is the ratio of triangles to squares? Super important. Order. Triangles first. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 triangles. To how many squares? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is my ratio. Now write the ratio in its simplest form. whoops, this is the same ratio that we've just done. My apologies. But we're looking for a number that we can divide 10 by and 8 by. The number there is 2, so I divide both sides by 2. You don't explicitly need to write the little divide signs. I just think it's nice to show what you're doing. Which we get 5 and 4. So the ratio of triangles to squares is 5 to 4. Right, so the next one. Kyle, Steve and Murray win some money in the lottery. Kyle wins 2,000, Steve wins 5,000 and Murray wins 8,000. Express their winnings as a ratio. So that's going to be 2,000 to 5,000 to 8,000. Okay, so ratios can have 3 items in it as well. They can actually have as many as you can, but we're just going to be focusing on 3. So we've got 2,000 to 5,000 to 8,000, and we're going to simplify that ratio. So we're looking for a number that we can divide 2,000 by, 5,000 by, and 8,000. I can divide all of these by 1,000. So 2,000 divided by 1,000 is 2. 5,000 divided by 1,000 is 5. And 8,000 divided by 1,000 is 8. So what that actually means is that for every £2 that Kyle got, Steve got £5 and Murray got £8.